that you're in the course or something, so I definitely will include you. You might be able to see who I follow, and I like a lot of his stuff. I can't think of his name. He's out of Texas. He's a researcher, a building scientist, and he has definitely done posts on DensGlass, any other gypsum material that if water can get in them, they can degrade and mold too. If you read the installation instructions and especially the warranties on these products, they're going to tell you everything that could go wrong because they're disclaiming it. And there's a lot that can go wrong. So DensGlass is a good idea to use. And I used it in my house behind the fire. We put stone, big thin stone behind around the fireplace. So ripped out some tile, put stone there, and they put DensGlass on it. It was fine. I do think that it is probably rated the same as plywood, but honestly, plywood is the strongest material to hold your building together in a tornado. And I'm saying that, but it's got to be. Because you have all these fibers going in opposite directions. And OSB is similar in terms of ratings if you get APA rated, and APA is the American Plywood Association, which is really now the Engineered Wood Association because it's not just plywood. And so in terms of, I prefer plywood. It doesn't get moldy that quickly. It has to get wet for a very long time before we would have a problem with it. Same thing with solid lumber. Things like fiberboard are very thin materials, can easily get moldy. I'm not sure what the coating is. I think DensGlass might be fiberglass. Obviously that wouldn't mold, but the other part of your question, Emmy, about a vapor barrier or rain screen, no vapor barriers on walls or ceilings. And I just did see an article posted, I think it's Green Building Advisor. It's one of these online kind of magazine things that you have to join. And they posted an article about why it's so great to have this plastic vapor barrier on the ceiling. And I actually have photographs of mold growing behind plastic vapor barriers. So inevitably there's going to be a leak, and our buildings want to dry to the inside more than anything. Because if it's raining outside, and it can rain anywhere, the relative humidity outside will be almost 100%. And maybe it rains for a couple days, even if it rains for a day. During that time, the only place your building's trying to dry is to the inside. If you're in a humid climate that tends for higher humidity than what you would be living with in your home, it's the building's still gonna always be drying to the inside. Then we have vapor differentials, we have air movement differentials. They're very complicated. But in most cases, if it's moisture outside during events, the inside is drier, as well it should be, and that's the direction that water wants to go. It will only dry to the drier side. And so I never recommend a vapor barrier on a ceiling or a wall in any climate, that includes the northern climates, because there's always places that can leak. And if water can get into our enclosure, the assembly of materials that are building our homes on the exterior, there's no way for it to get out if it can't dry to the inside. Plus, we won't notice it on the inside because in plastic, we won't be able to find the moisture with traditional methods. And the mold that gets generated there, just on dirt and dust, including in insulation, it seems to be able to get out because there are paths that mold can figure out ways to move, because there's always some way that a little bit of moisture is able to dry, but not enough to dry out the leak. So no vapor barriers. You do want to have a water-resistant membrane, but that's vapor open. And so when we talk about things like Tyvek, the zip system, that kind of thing, there's another one called VaproShield that I think is good. There's a Blueskin, and there's all kinds of them. You want to evaluate the PERM rating, and I do have a class on vapor barriers and PERM rating in the Dwellwell Institute that comes with the course. And that would be a good one to watch on that topic to understand permeability is the difference between a Gore-Tex jacket and a plastic bag. So you go jogging and it's cool, so you're wearing a windbreaker, but it's a Gore-Tex windbreaker, you won't feel hot and clammy inside. if you go jogging in a very cheap windbreaker that's really plastic, you'll be awful. You'll be sweating. It's kind of like wearing a sauna jacket. You'll just be sweating inside the jacket because there's a type of fiber that's more expensive to make that will allow vapor, which is moisture in a completely different form. It's in airborne form, to get out, even though the water droplets can't get in. So we talk about that in that course. And so rain screen, that would be a water resistive membrane for water to not a vapor barrier. That is what gets included in a rain screen. And under brick, you need an airspace of 2 inches. Doesn't happen a lot in houses, but it is part of the building codes. You can find out, I do have a class on masonry, I believe, and that I did a few years ago that I talk a lot about that with all the resources. It's actually I talk about chimneys there as well. And so masonry is the original rain screen. And what the problem that has happened is that uneducated installers that aren't the craftsmen that we used to have are installing brick and then putting all this mortar ends up behind the brick, and then there's not enough airspace for water to run. And that's part of what's causing degradation in our brick, because the water can't run or dry out through that airspace. Emmy, I see you're asking about would you use a house rep? Yeah, I used Tyvek on my house. You have to know that it has a certain number of days. I think it's in the 200s, might be 280 actually, that it can be exposed to the UV. This UV of the sun will degrade material, so you just can't leave it out there forever. On Tyvek, if the Tyvek logo is not blue, bright blue, like when you bought it, then it started to degrade, and then you end up having to put another layer over it. And we did have to do that at my house. The builder was very slow. I told him about it, and he couldn't pick up the pace, and so we ended up having to do another layer of Tyvek, which I think is fine. VaproShield is orange. I have heard really good things about that I haven't used it myself, but I have looked at it, and they have really good research. I've talked to their technical people at conferences and stuff, and so it is very vapor open, and so I do think that's more of a stick-on solution. But I do like the things that they're saying on their marketing and what I've heard from other professionals on VaproShield. The Hardy board has their own house rep now, and I did look at that for a client. I think it was less. I think Tyvek has a perm rating of 50, and I believe the Hardy was like 30, still really good, so probably okay. I like when a product specializes in what they do, as opposed to if they do kind of fiber cement siding and now they're getting into the house wrap industry. Are they making the house wrap or just putting their name on someone else's house wrap? I don't know, but I mean that seemed like that was enough perm rating. You definitely want to be more than 10. So Tyvek's 50. The Hardy reps 30. I can't remember what VaproShield is, but I think it was a good number. And so those are the things that you evaluate when you're looking for vapor openness, so that it isn't the plastic bag or the plastic vapor barrier that's trapping moisture in the room. That if there's a little moisture getting in some way, somehow, that it could get out. And we will eliminate some of the problems there.